tonight to meet our newest Magnusson Fellow. The Magnusson Fellowship, created in honour of our late Chancellor, Magnus Magnusson, comprises an extraordinarily gifted group of leading world thinkers, including, amongst others, our Chancellor, Nobel laureate, Professor Muhammad Yunus, Dr. Mary Robinson, past President of Ireland, Raja Shahada, the Palestinian human rights lawyer, Professor Will Storer, Director at the Centre of Theological Inquiry at Princeton, Will Hutton, Master of Magdalen College, Oxford, and philosopher Renata Celesso of Ljubljana University. Our university fellowship draws us together in conversation to discuss pressing problems in society and agree to deliver a social action programme to solve them. So, for example, following fellowship meetings, the university set up a nursing school in Bangladesh in partnership with the Grameen Healthcare Trust. We've facilitated bringing the Grameen Micro-Lending Bank to the United Kingdom, and we've worked with the Mary Robinson Foundation to establish the first global database on climate justice. This evening, we have the chance to hear from a very special individual whose status as a global thought leader is matched only by her personal commitment to social action, Professor Eva Haller. In conversation, together with Eva, is Dr. Sally Magnusson. The daughter of our late Chancellor, Sally is a GCU honorary graduate, but she's also honorary president of the Magnus Magnusson Fellowship and a great friend of our university. I don't want to spoil this evening's treat by giving you too much information about Eva, but I must note Eva's extraordinary link to Scotland from a young age, when she came under the protection of the famous Dumfries-born Church of Scotland missionary Jane Haining, who died in Auschwitz in 1944 with the Jewish children from her orphanage in Budapest after refusing to leave their side. Eva forged her remarkable career in America, and through social activism and philanthropy, she's transformed literally thousands of lives. From the time, many years ago, when I can just see her, when she marched with Martin Luther King, to her most recent work, chairing the charity Free the Children, she's worked tirelessly for the common good and is the recipient of very many well-deserved honours from a wide range of organisations, including the United Nations. Eva had a key role in bringing the We Day for young people to the United Kingdom for the very first time last Friday, and I was very privileged to be able to be at the event as her guest. Here she is, meeting Malala that day, and here, dancing better than me on the actual day. She exudes a joy in life that is infectious. So it's over to you, Sally, and the incomparable Eva Haller.
Thanks very much, Pamela, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me an enormous pleasure, actually, to be able to talk to Eva on your behalf. You know, there are some people you meet in life who you make a quiet note never to let yourself be seated next to again.
I hope that wasn't me.
Just what I was going to say. There are others of whom you realise within seconds of being introduced to them that no dinner is going to be long enough to find out everything you want to know, and that by hook or by crook you are determined to know this person better. And yes, I think you can guess into which category Eva fell. When I found myself beside her at a dinner in New York last year to celebrate the launch of GCU's campus there, I was, as I think everybody probably is, which is why she gets so much done, I was entranced. What impressed me, though, as much as what she had to say, was her curiosity. There was I, bombarding her with questions, but she was much more interested in me, in my life in Scotland and the things I was up to. Curiosity and an unflagging zeal for life and the opportunities around the next corner are, as I quickly came to realise, the mark of the woman. Long before the end of the meal, Pamela Gillis, who was on Eva's other side, and I were already giving each other the kind of meaningful look that we both knew meant Magnusson Fellow. And that's because, as Pamela was indicating, Eva's life and her interests and her determined championing of those who are, as she puts it, underserved by the world, accords so well with the principles behind the Magnusson Fellowship and the ethos of this great university. So here now is my chance to ask Eva all the questions I didn't manage in New York because she was so busy interrogating me. And it's your chance as well, because after we've talked for a short time, I will invite you to ask your own questions. So please do seize the opportunity to seek the wisdom of a wonderful woman who, as we'll discover, has been around. First, Eva, a life of inspired meddling. Now, I suggested that title, but it's you who like to describe yourself as meddling, which has got the idea behind it of getting involved in areas where it's not immediately recognized your presence is needed, if I may put it that way.
That's very true.
Yes.
It's very true.
So what's been so important to you about meddling then?
Well, you know, if you spend a lifetime doing what we've been doing, as things become clear to you that might not be clear yet to young people who are eager and anxious to create an organization that will change the world. So every once in a while when I'm listening to young people telling me what they want to do, and one of them that I'm thinking of is our Chancellor's daughter, Monica Yunus, who started Sing for Hope, a marvelous organization to volunteer services of music and to old people in hospitals and to young kids and in schools and many other areas. And when she was telling me what she was planning to do, I said, do you have a 501c3? And she looked at me as if I was speaking another language, and I explained that charity has to have a certain obligations and what you have to do, and I said, do you want to have children one day, and do you want to make this organization big? Will you have an office? And all kinds of things that at first blush you don't think about. You just want to do good. And so very shortly thereafter she said goodbye to me, and she didn't seem very interested. And 2 weeks later she called and said, Eva, can we take you out for lunch? And so that was the beginning of my meddling with Sing for Hope. But it really, a lot of it has to do with your life experience that allows you to know things that others who are just in the beginning of their philanthropic, charitable, caring life is. And if you can meddle and can make it faster, shorter, better for them to be more effective, well, I love it. I just meddle on.
And your meddling has been driven, I think it's fair to say, by your early experiences in life, which began in Hungary, where you were born in 1930.
Yes.
And it was a Hungary that was soon overrun by the Nazis, and you joined at the age of 12 the Hungarian resistance.
Well, that was again, and you know, I think that you chose that word meddling as we are talking, it becomes more and more appropriate that you are totally correct. It was my brother, who was 7 years older than I, who was printing up leaflets, anti-Nazi leaflets, and then delivering them and distributing them. And at first, when I asked him if I may come along, of course the answer was no, because he felt my parents would kill him. First of all, my parents didn't even know that he was doing it, let alone my coming along. But I did meddle along and started going with him and seeing the heroism of that young man who then, as my life has gone on and even today, I would think that my brother John has been my guiding light to do whatever I could, because he was killed very soon thereafter and never was able to fulfill that which he would have done had he been alive to do so.
Now, you were a Jewish family, and things obviously became more and more difficult for Jews in Hungary. Your parents went into hiding, and you ended up in the Scottish Institute under, as Pamela was mentioning, Jane Haining. Tell us about that time.
Well, first of all, I need to tell all of you that I owe the fact that I'm alive to you guys. Without Jane, I would be here. Scotland saved my life. And I never really had the opportunity to say thank you. Jane was a heroic woman who came to Hungary and was called back by the mission, and she refused to go back. She said in her letter that she needs to be in Budapest at the Institute with her Jewish children. Shortly thereafter, she was taken to Auschwitz and killed in the gas chamber.
And it was because actually, to our shame as Scots, I don't think we probably know as much about Jane Haining as we ought to. It was a boarding school that she was running.
It was a boarding school, and at the time, she really was not planning to be a missionary, and she was not planning to save lives. And in one of her letters, you can read about the fact that she suddenly found her calling. This is what she needs to do. And so she went to Budapest, and the school was actually originally for middle and upper class kids, boarding school, which slowly, as the war went on and there was need for protecting us kids, became a place of protection. And the reason, even though we were rounded up to be exterminated, it happened because we were there in the Institute. It gave us an extra 2-3 months of life, because very soon after the roundup, the Russians occupied Hungary, so that those extra weeks made it possible for me then to go into hiding and survive. So I owe you guys my life.
Now, you didn't know Jane herself because she was taken off to Auschwitz before you arrived, but you arrived there, you were hidden in the school for these extra few months, but then came the time when the children there were rounded up to be taken off to the gas chambers themselves. How did you escape that?
Well, again, that meddling thing comes back. We all had to, it was December, and we all had to put our coats on, and I don't know, looking back at it, I don't know why they cared that we should have our coats, after all. They were not particularly interested whether we catch a cold or not. But as we put our coats on, I decided that I really don't want to go there. Wherever it was, I didn't want to go.
You didn't know where they obviously didn't tell you where they were going. What did they say they were doing with you?
They were rounding us up, and they are taking us into the ghetto, supposedly. The Jewish ghetto at that point was the starting point to the trains, or the ending point, whatever way you look at it. And so I decided I don't want to go there. And so I went over to that young man, and I told him that I was much too young and much too beautiful to die. And I didn't really believe that. I believed I was young. I didn't think I was beautiful. But he said, "Go away." And I started running, and then I remembered the little boy that my parents entrusted me with, whose mother was in hiding with them. And so I went back, and I said to the officer, "Oops, I forgot something," and grabbed the kid and ran away. So that was how we survived.
And miraculously, you found that your parents had escaped also, or had managed to stay alive in Budapest.
Yes, it was, they had fake documents, and they're living in the blue collar area of the working area, where they were managed to find a lovely couple who, for some money, gave them some false documents, and they were there, and we managed to get reunited. It was just weeks before the Russian occupation. So, again, had it not been for the Scottish Institute to give me those extra months, I just wouldn't have been able to be alive.
So Eva, how did that start in life up to adolescence? How did that form you? And also the death of your brother who was going off to Yugoslavia, wasn't he, to fight with Tito, and I mean, you can tell us this, but he was shot, and I know that marked you deeply as well. When you think of the whole of your life now, what was it that these first 14, 15 years or so gave you that has driven you forward?
You know, I think my first 14 years, I had the gift of my brother. He was there for me. And then when he was killed, and he was not just killed. He escaped with 4 other men from forced labor. Were trying to get over to the Yugoslav border to join Tito and his forces fighting against Hitler. And they spent one night in a little hut which had a front door and a back door, and they heard the dogs and the soldiers coming in the shooting. And my brother turned to his 4 friends and said, "Run, I cover." And they ran in the back, and they all survived. And my brother was killed. And all his acts that I can remember had a sense of nobility, a sense of selflessness, a self of caring. So he sort of left me that. There wasn't anything else that we have left of him. And so I sort of owe it to him to do the things that I think he would have done, probably better than me, but at least I'm doing them.
So let's move you on from Hungary. The war ended. You weren't able to go to university in Hungary in the way that you wanted to, and so you decided to cross the Atlantic.
Well, it's exactly what happened, because coming from a non-working class family, the communist Hungary, I was not entitled to go to university. And so my parents, actually, my father was very, very ill, but anyhow, they decided that I tried to figure out a way to escape from that one. And so I did. I was 18, and I ended up in Ecuador because I had family who left Hungary earlier, understanding what Hitler was about. And that again, you know, it's such a heart-wrenching kind of a thing. When do you escape? And if you look in today's world, all the people who have to leave their countries, leave their homes, end up in camps, end up in cultures they know nothing about. But at least they feel that there is safety, there is some place to go to. And so my father sent out his younger brother and their wives and children, because my mother didn't feel we could leave her aging parents in Budapest without some protection. So we didn't go, they went. And so after the war, I was 18, they sent me a ticket on a boat that carried some people, mostly animals, and it took many, many weeks to get from the Italian port to Ecuador. But, you know, it was my introduction to another world, to another culture, to another language, and to reintroduce to my family I hadn't seen in 10 years.
And you moved on eventually to the United States, to New York, where
Yes.
you cleaned houses to raise the money to go to school and to get yourself a degree.
That was very true, and you know, I'm really a lousy housekeeper. So there were very few times when I actually got paid. Whether I burnt in the broiler the steak, or I was asked to use the waxing machine for the floor. And I don't know if any of you use waxing machine, but they have a life of their own. And you know, since I come from a very intellectual background, I was quoting Goethe to myself, the sorcerer's apprentice, Valle Valle manche stecke, was a fleece and them thing, and instead of having all those brooms that the apprentice had to deal with when he didn't know the magical word, I just didn't know how to turn it off. So that made it clear very soon that my profession will have to be somewhat different from cleaning houses. And
it turned out to be, to start with, social work. That was what your degree was in. But then
yes.
you moved on to starting a company. Now you've got a couple of husbands in there as well.
Yeah, but they are some of them are superfluous.
Not the present one.
No, the present one is a keeper. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about the starting of your company. What kind of company that was, and because that's actually what enabled you to
made me rich.
And to become a philanthropist. Yes.
Yeah.
Made you stonking rich then. Yes.
Yeah, rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. For a while, yeah.
Tell us about it though. What kind of company was it?
My late husband was a genius, and this one is too, but you're welcome. He was a marketing genius, and really he said to me, we didn't have any money, and whether I would join him in creating this company that would be doing marketing and PR and image building, brand building for the Fortune 100 companies. And so our bedroom in the daytime put a tabletop on it, so that was our office. And I sat outside, I was the secretary. But since we were very poor, he gave me the title of president. So that's how we started. And by the end of 1968, we made $1 million, which was totally unheard of, after taxes. And so we approached the UNICEF, and we had a lot of equipment that we used for that period, projectors and tape machines, and we offered to go to Southeast Asia and travel around the world with our equipment. And because it was equipment that you could plug into a motorcycle battery, those days, that's how that worked, we were able to do a lot of teaching and a lot of bringing kids together in the jungles, in the woods, and do a lot of inspiring them to want to know about the world that was beyond them in geography. So that's what we did for a while. And then our money ran out, as money sometimes does. So Reader's Digest called us at a very opportune moment, suggesting that could we please come back because they needed a school campaign for children's books or Reader's Digest books. So we came back to start our business again. But by then it was clear that we set down the pattern of our life, that we will always be working with children, that we are very interested in the power of youth, of sharing with youth our belief that they have the power to change the world, and that started us on the road where we are still.
And what was it that impelled you to make that move in the first place? Because a lot of people start companies and make a lot of money, but it's not everybody's first thought that they will then go and spend it all in Southeast Asia, helping young people. What was it that moved you towards philanthropy?
Well, my first honest answer would be that I have no idea. But if I think about it, because I never thought about it, it was because, my brother John was always in the back of my head all my life. And we were so fortunate. We made the money, and there was so much to do, and we learned so much during those years about hunger, about need, about our ability, when we traveled through Southeast Asia, about the difference that we were able to make with so little. That there was no question that's what, that if we made money again, we'll again find a way to spend it and do it that way. And, you learn on the way as you go. And we learned that building schools is good, but what if there is no clean water? And building schools is great, but if the kids come to school hungry, they can't learn. And building school is great, but if you don't afford and support a community around them, but the mothers don't have an income so that they can work and buy those school books or just create life. Or if you want people to eat, the idea that you really want to create agriculture so that people become self-sustaining. So as years passed, it became clearer and clearer that building schools or working with children, none of these things alone answered the need that we have to create an environment. And the tsunami was really, for me, the turning point, because we went to Sri Lanka after the terrible tragedy and decided to rebuild part of those schools that were destroyed. And it took about 3 months before the fairly corrupt government gave us the permission to go in and build. We were just about ready to do that when the Japanese came in with a check for $80 million. And they said they are giving that to the country, provided that nobody else is allowed to be an NGO to build that anything. And that was really a very important turning point for us, because we realized that we need to be bigger and do more and not build a school, but help the people, the communities, to adopt a village, to create a village so they have the strengths that no $80 million check can change, because this is their life, this is their village, this is their way of living.
And so the pattern of your life became working at the business in order to generate the funds you needed, and then working out where the need was, and doing your bit to fulfill it wherever you could see that. Was that?
That was much part of it, yes. The other part is civil rights. This was the period of Martin Luther King. This was the period of Vietnam War. This was the period of President Kennedy. We are, it's hard today to look at our political situation in the United States and think about how uninvolved we are in what our fate should be, and how powerless we feel often. We didn't feel that way, and mostly for university students, the wonder of being involved in the history and the story of your country. And
you marched with Martin Luther King?
Yes, we did the Selma March, which scared the living daylight out of me, because of those big German shepherds and the sheriffs and their sticks. But I took my 14-year-old son with me, because I felt that this was history that we need to experience. This is life that we need to know about. That this is something that will mark him forever, and we'll know forever that we owe it to our fellow citizens to support them.
Now, in 1984, your first husband had died, and you met Joel Haller. Now, I don't know which story you wish to tell.
The real one or the fake one?
The real one or the fake one?
Yeah. I prefer the fake one, but he prefers the real one, so it's...
Well, give us the fake one first.
Well, my husband is so adorable. He's an OBGYN, and clearly you don't become an OBGYN unless you love women. I mean, that sort of goes with the territory. So we met. I was a widow by then 3 years, and he was a widower for a couple of years. And we met on a bus in Mexico, and so he's
This is the real story.
That's the real story. I don't have the heart to tell you what I invented. So he sat down next to me, and a fairly chatty guy, and wanted to tell me what a great marriage he had, and hoped that I had a great marriage, being widows, whatever. And he asked me what did I miss the most by being a widow, and I said, I miss the conspiracy of two. The feeling when one is in one corner at the cocktail party and the other is on the other, and you know that on the way home you'll say, so what did he say? What did you learn? And what was that all about? Or when you stand in line at an airport and he stands in line while you get something else so that you save each other's spaces. That's the conspiracy of partnership. And I told him that that's what I miss the most. And so he decided to marry me. Right then and there. So any of you who are single, in case, the word conspiracy works.
I should tell you the fake story was all about him flying a plane, and was it running out of fuel as he
landed on my
house?
non-existent farm, and I just got so tired of the bus story that I needed to create an airplane.
But anyway, the pair of you then continued the philanthropic work, and I mean, if you were to sum up for people that don't, I mean, you've done so many different things, and you've got fingers in so many different pies. But how would you kind of sum up the thrust of the work that you've been involved in, certainly over the last 20 or 30 years?
Well, number one, I couldn't do it without him, because he's the backbone of my flighty dreams, and he will help me make it happen. And some of the ideas come from him, some from me, but whatever it is we do together. And we both have the same background. He used to be, for 10 years, director of Planned Parenthood, was involved with Doctors Without Borders. So when we met, it wasn't that one of us was not involved in the same kind of engagement. And we started traveling together to Africa and India and Asia, wherever our projects take us. It is a magical world, because you keep on meeting people who do so much more and achieve so much and care so much about their world. And then I come here and I get to see Glasgow Caledonian University. And I feel I'm the luckiest person I ever met, because this is such a privilege to be here. And I feel I'm learning each day so much from all of you. And the Caledonian Club, and every aspect, the Grameen Bank, the nursing school, everything you do here, and I'm sure most of you are involved with the university who are in the audience. I cannot tell you what privilege and pleasure and joy it is for us to be part of you. And I really thank you for that. And that didn't answer your question.
No.
Because I don't remember what the question was.
It was really just to get a sense of the thrust, the general kind of thrust of your work over the last 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, my impression is that the projects are mainly based on youth, on building and affirming the lives of young people, often in difficult circumstances. Is that
yeah,
correct?
that's very true. But you see, almost every organization we are involved with has the same goal. It is just that they're achieving it a different way. One of the projects in India, the Video Volunteers, is a video journalism by women mostly who don't know how to read and write and never will. But with their cameras, they capture the moments of the untouchables, the bride burning, the child rape or whatever, and have done incredible amount of public service, because India, being a huge country, but it only has a few television stations in large cities, and therefore nobody knows, unless they live in those big cities, of what's going on in India. So having our people in Kerala, in Goa, in all over the place, going out and collecting material and then managing to give it or sell it. We try to sell it rather than give it, but whatever. To big television stations, to let them know what really is going on in the country. So there are a number of projects that we do that are different from each other, but they converge, whether it is Free the Children in India or Video Volunteers in India or many of the other things we do. They end up connecting to each other because basically the needs are so similar.
How do you decide which ones to do? What is it that fires your imagination most when you're deciding what to do next, or where to channel your energies and your money?
Well, that's a question I've never been able to answer. But if I try, the other day we met Malala, and you all know the story of this young girl who was shot because she wanted to go to school. She was damaged. She's now living in Birmingham, where she's studying, and she's an incredible orator. And the young woman, also from Pakistan, who is now working with her to create the foundation, asked if we would help her create the foundation. Well, that's a privilege. How can one say no to the opportunity of being helpful to somebody who has done, who is so heroic as Malala? I mean, we were all captured by her, by listening to her. So that would be one way, is somebody asking us to be helpful in an area where we feel that, yes, we might have some expertise, or we have some money for, or have the connection that we can make. And, it's...
What's the achievement you've been most quietly satisfied with?
Well, the word quietly doesn't ever apply to me. So if I then take that word out of your question, every day and everything is when you get to be 84, the wonder of being alive and the wonder of what the day will bring is the achievement. If I can inspire somebody, or if I could mentor somebody, or if we can create something together. Almost every day gives us an opportunity, not necessarily starting new organizations, but to reinforce an organization or reinforce young people's belief in themselves. It just, each day is a miracle. And I am a Pollyanna, but that's how it is. It really is.
Well, I'm going to ask for some questions now from the audience, because just while they're thinking, we've got a couple of microphones which we can hand round. Just while they're thinking about it, if there was somebody here that, maybe this is a question from the floor, but was saying, what's your advice? What's your advice to somebody starting out in life now with the same kind of eagerness to change the world or do something that will make a difference? What would you say to them?
I would say, what's your passion? What makes you want to wake up in the morning? Who is your idol? Where would you like to be in the next few years? I wouldn't have any advice until I would really understand where that person is at. And the chances are, when you say to somebody, what's your passion? They might stop for a moment. But almost everybody has a passion that can be used for the common good. And you know, like about a year ago, we found a tiny little lamp, which is a solar lamp. And that lamp has changed the lives of 60,000 homes so far, because about 1.5 billion homes have no electric grid. And there are huts where people live, and there are no windows on huts. That whole idea is you want to be protected. And it's dark. It's dark during the day, it's dark during the night, and so you have kerosene as your light, which is very unhealthy for you. And these little solar lights are very strong, and you put it outside for a couple of hours a day, and then it lights for 8 hours, and kids can do their homework, and mothers can do their sewing or their beading or cooking. And so this has become a major interest of many young people who want to be sure that kids can learn and have that light. And now we have a solar charger where you can plug it into that little solar light, and you can have your cell phone charged. And you know and we found that many of our women at night, when they have to go out to the latrine, don't get raped if they have the light, and the lions don't come near them. So, you know, every day has a miracle that you can hold on to. You can buy 10 lights and change the life of 10 people, 10 families. You can write about it for your newspaper, or whatever.
Wonderful. Questions? Yes. Martin.
Eva, that's been fascinating. I'm sure I echo that for everybody. Question for me, either locally or nationally, when you go in and set up these various operations, are you getting much political support or barriers, or how do you get around even the local and national politics in some of these areas?
That's a very good question, and we deal with it every day because we are in so many countries. We are a non-political, none of our charities are political. When we go into a country or a community or the Masai Mara or wherever, it is because we were asked to go in by a tribe, by a community who feels the need for creating, whether to help them make a hole in the ground to bring clean water, or whatever that they feel is their need, or build a clinic. But we are always asked to come in. That really avoids the political issues. We are also working with all of our charities outside of main cities, because main cities don't need us. We are very far out in the countryside, so that also avoids any political issue.
Thank you. Let's take that one there, and then this one here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a very inspirational talk. I'm very interested in the concept of sustainability, and we know that very often charities will be set up and they're not sustainable, and the external people move away and the whole thing collapses, or it creates a level of dependence that's extremely unhealthy. We know that Professor Yunus has a view about charity and is much more ready to promote social business. I wondered if you had any comments to make about that, or anything from your own observations about how we can ensure that philanthropic work that's carried out is in fact sustainable. Thank you.
You know, that is a question that we grapple with every day. It is quite true that well-meaning charities go into different areas of the world and they build, and then they realize that they run out of funds, or that the community is not supporting it, or it really was the wrong premise. It happens quite a bit. What we try to do with our model called Adopt a Village is that the community adopts every aspect, whether it is the clean water or the agriculture or the education or the clinic or the employment, the microcredit, it all has to work together because we are not going to be there forever. Our goal is to leave, we usually give ourselves a 5-year period, hoping that by then the community will be totally ready to run every aspect of the program. And if it takes 6 years, well, so be it. But the whole idea is that we really want to be sure that the tools for independent living are there. And then again, you know, the real issue sometimes is that if you can help communities stay in the communities and not go into the big cities, we are doing something especially important because our large cities all over the world are overrun by young people who cannot find employment. The drought has destroyed the animal husbandry, so they move into the cities where there is nothing for them to do. So it's a very important aspect of charities to understand that when they move into a place and help create a community, that community will sustain the young people and not have them move into the cities where there really is drugs and violence in their future and unemployment.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Thank you. You've got a wonderful story to tell, and it's an honour to hear your story tonight. But you've got a lot of messages for the world. Has anyone approached you to make a film of your story with the message to share with others?
It's very kind of you. Every once in a while, somebody, a trusting soul, wants to write my story or wants to film it. I really don't particularly care for that idea because that takes up time. And I rather do future, present and future, than go back into the past. So it has never appealed to me. And then, you know, when it comes to inspiring stories, there are many more inspiring stories than mine. And right here in London, not in Glasgow, in London, 2 weeks ago, Alice Hurd Summer died at the age of 110, who was the last survivor of Terezin. And I'm sure many of you have seen her film. Matter of fact, her life story won an Oscar just a couple of weeks ago. And now there was a story. There was a story. But no, I really would not be interested. But thank you for the idea.
Was that you offering?
Well, I just think there's so many strength of stories, and we're all using it in our day-to-day work now, telling other stories. I just think it's such a powerful story to share.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else got a question? Yes.
Thank you. Very quickly, could I say it's been an honour hearing you and to learn again about Jane Haining. I've been to Budapest many times and I know Jane's work, and that you are just such a glorious alumni of that school. Can I ask how your work is made known? I come ignorant of all the philanthropic work you have done. You say you work away from the cities. How do local communities who are usually impoverished, powerless, how do they get to know about your organization's work?
You know, most of our organizations work in the underserved areas of our own countries. You certainly have here in Glasgow underserved area that through the university and through your community are making it into a good, solid neighborhood that we went to see yesterday. You know, it depends what your interest is, what you would like to know about. Is it work in your country, in your city, where there are so many underserved areas? Are you interested in international work? Or are you just interested in knowing what goes on around the world? There is an awful lot of information that you can pick up on the websites of Charity Buzz, a number of other organizations that gives you both the idea of the metrics of what charities are doing good and how they are doing it.
Or was your point more what your charities are doing? Because I think it's probably fair to say that possibly because you are so little interested actually in publicizing yourself or your work, you would rather get on and do it. It's actually quite difficult to find out what you do. I mean, I did some research on you in advance of this, and actually there's not very much written about you. I think what was behind this question was actually if people want to find more about your work and your organizations, how do they do it?
I am embarrassed to tell you, but all you have to do is look at Wikipedia.
What are the ones, okay, let's get at the question this way. What are the ones you're most proud of the organizations, of the projects that you're currently working with? Give me the three that you're most...
I think last week in London, the We Day with Malala, Free the Children, is something that we are very proud of, because we are now we started in Canada with a 12-year-old boy who read an article about Iqbal, a boy in Pakistan who was killed by the drug mafia because he escaped and because he publicized the fact that from the age of 4 you are chained to a loom and his little fingers make those rugs. And the 12-year-old Canadian boy was so upset about reading this in his paper that he told his mother that he is going to go and investigate it. And his mother told him, listen, I don't let you cross the street by yourself. You ain't gonna go to Pakistan. But he did, a year later, with a young social work type, and started the organization that we now know as Free the Children. The laws were changed, and you cannot buy a rug today that was made by a child slave in all the advanced civilized countries. This is an organization that by today has over 2 million members. The We Day we were referring to in London was the first one on this continent. We have a curriculum that is a year-long curriculum in which you have to do one global and one local social action, and that will entitle your school to attend a We Day. You cannot buy a ticket. You just have to do the kind of social action that we consider helps humanity. And so by now we have 10 cities in Canada that every year have a We Day. The attendance in Toronto is 20,000 kids for each We Day, bringing in the schools from the areas. And in Montreal and in all the other cities. We now started the United States last year, so we have Minneapolis, Seattle, San Francisco. What else? What did I miss? Chicago will be next, yeah. And again, each of these We Days celebrate the fact that the kids who can attend it have done and understood what social action and doing the common good is all about. And so that is an important curriculum to have, because it does help kids to, and then of course what happens at the We Day, you have all the big name artists who come and sing and dance, and it's sort of, it's a real treat. And you have the Dalai Lama, and you have you have the big name guys coming and advising us about what life should be about. And Archbishop comes and dances on the stage, you know. There's 1, 2, 2. And it is an occasion that kids will never forget. And then hearing Malala was just so amazing.
Well, thank you for that. And if you do look at Wikipedia, actually, you do find an extraordinary range of enterprises and projects focused mainly around young people, women's issues, and I see them going back actually to that promise really that you made silently to your brother, wasn't it? It's
yes.
about go out
Yes.
and do for him, you know, what will make the world a better place.
It is what will... Remember endorphins, guys. Remember? Endorphin is what is created in your body when you do something good. And endorphin makes you younger, happier, and healthier. So by doing good for others, you are growing endorphins in your own body. And that is my message to you. Grow your endorphins.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a woman positively spilling over with endorphins. And I think we can only thank you as someone who would much rather be in the present and the future. Thank you for dwelling on the past for us this evening and for giving us such a marvelous picture of a life of inspired meddling. Ladies and gentlemen, Eva Hanna.
It's such a privilege to welcome you to our university community, and we are delighted to have you as our newest Magnusson Fellow. And thank you so much, Sally, for engaging in such a stimulating, inspiring conversation. We'll all take away many lessons from that. But please join us outside for a wee drinky. You'll get a chance to have a wee word, hopefully with Eva outside. Thank you once again, Eva, for coming all the way here.